Egypt's President El-Sisi to inaugurate the Grand Egyptian Museum with the attendance of 79 global delegations. Egypt completes preparations for the Grand Egyptian Museum opening tomorrow. And the UN warns that al-Fasher in Sudan has become an epicenter of systematic atrocities. Hello, good evening. This is Q News. It's 8 o'clock here in Cairo. I'm Mark Summers. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi will inaugurate the Grand Egyptian Museum tomorrow with an unprecedented international turnout. 79 official delegations, including 39 led by kings, princes and heads of state and government. The Egyptian presidency has announced that tomorrow's opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum will draw one of the largest diplomatic gatherings in recent memory, underscoring global interest in Egypt's cultural leadership. 79 official delegations are attending, 39 headed by reigning royals and national leaders. Senior ministers and parliamentarians from more than 30 additional nations will join regional and international organizations, plus major global companies in attending the museum's inauguration. Officials say the turnout reflects Egypt's vision of uniting the legacy of the past with contemporary creativity and a shared future. Egypt finalized preparations for tomorrow's Grand Egyptian Museum opening, with ministries coordinating a seamless inauguration. Final checks are underway ahead of the Grand Egyptian Museum's long-awaited opening, with authorities handling security, traffic and visitor services for an event expected to draw global attention. Main roads were announced as fully upgraded to improve flow towards the museum precinct. Officials say transport plans, ceremony logistics and media operations are in place, with hospitality and emergency response on standby. The opening aims to showcase Egypt's cultural leadership, boost tourism and anchor a wider revitalization of the Giza Plateau. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has met with the President of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, welcoming his participation in the Grand Egyptian Museum inauguration as a symbol of strong bilateral ties. Both leaders discussed strengthening cooperation, with Egypt affirming full support for Congo's sovereignty, unity and peace efforts, including the Washington and Doha tracks. They agreed on shared Nile water principles based on consensus and mutual benefit. President el-Sisi reaffirmed Egypt's principled foreign policy centered on peace, stability and respect for international law. Egypt's Cabinet Information Center says the Grand Egyptian Museum is a civilizational leap, the world's largest single civilization museum beside the Giza pyramids, spanning 500,000 square meters with 100,000 artifacts, including 5,000 from Tutankhamun, shown together for the first time. The center says the Grand Egyptian Museum will open with 12 exhibition halls and an expected footfall of around 15,000 visitors daily, more than 5 million a year. By contrast, the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir, opened in 1902, is the Middle East's oldest archaeological museum, covering 10,000 square meters with 170,000 artifacts across 100 galleries. Tutankhamun's treasures were only partially displayed there since their 1922 discovery. Officials add that lifetime attendance at the Tahrir Museum has reached around 100 million visitors, while the Grand Egyptian Museum's scale and setting next to the pyramids are designed to anchor Egypt's next tourism phase. Egypt's Ministry of the Interior has announced traffic diversions ahead of the Grand Egyptian Museum opening ceremony. That comes as part of the final preparations for the Grand Egyptian Museum's opening ceremony tomorrow, where several temporary traffic diversions will be implemented to ensure smooth flow. The Egyptian Interior Ministry announced that alternative routes include El Batel Ahmed Abdel Aziz Street for traffic from Giza Nile Street, the Peace Tunnel Surface Road for Ring Road traffic, Tahrir Mas access for Corniche traffic, and Darshur Link for October traffic. Also, Western Arc via the Ring Road for 26th of July traffic. Vectors Traffic Police will guide motorists and ensure fluid movement. The Grand Egyptian Museum was named the 2024 Best Project Worldwide by the International Federation of Consulting Engineers, recognizing its fusion of cutting-edge engineering and iconic design and cementing Egypt's leadership in global heritage. The Federation hailed the museum as a landmark of innovation and advanced engineering, citing its scale, conservation labs, and visitor infrastructure as benchmarks for world museums. The award reinforces the Grand Egyptian Museum's status as both an architectural masterpiece and a premier cultural institution, underscoring Egypt's rising global role in heritage preservation and modern design excellence. Officials say the recognition will boost international tourism and partnerships around conservation, research, and exhibitions. Egypt's Tourism and Antiquities Minister, Sharif Fathi, says the Grand Egyptian Museum is a global game changer, not only the world's largest museum devoted to a single civilization, but also a cutting-edge scientific hub for research, conservation and training. The minister has further said the museum pairs iconic architecture with innovative displays while operating as a fully fledged research center. The museum houses advanced conservation labs, materials analysis suites, and digital collections, and runs training programs and joint missions with universities and heritage institutions worldwide. The minister also added that the Grand Egyptian Museum will serve scholars and specialists from Egypt and abroad, strengthening preservation of Egyptian antiquities and expanding Egyptology research. Jordan's tourism minister, Ahmed Hajazin, hailed tomorrow's Grand Egyptian Museum opening overlooking the Giza pyramids, calling it a world-class cultural landmark and a powerful global tourism magnet. Speaking to reporters in Amman, he said that the gem's debut, one of modern Egypt's signature achievements, will lift tourism across the region, including Jordan's Petra, by drawing new long-haul itineraries. He said the museum marks a qualitative leap in the display and documentation of ancient Egypt and opens broad avenues for Egypt-Jordan cooperation, exhibition technologies, digital archiving, and conservation and restoration training alongside private sector joint packages. Offering congratulations to Egypt's leadership and people, he called the Grand Egyptian Museum a masterpiece of architecture and a gift to humanity. France's Culture Minister Rachida Dati called the Grand Egyptian Museum a true gift to the world, conveying congratulations on behalf of President Emmanuel Macron and the French state ahead of tomorrow's opening. In press remarks, Minister Rachida Dati, attending on behalf of President Macron, hailed the Grand Egyptian Museum as the world's largest museum dedicated to a single civilization and a point of pride for Egypt and global heritage. She said France remains a long-standing partner in Egyptology and museum work, citing French contributions to the museum library development, underwater archaeology that helped uncover pieces now on display, and collaboration with French films on energy efficiency, management and architectural elements. Dati conveyed France's congratulations to the Egyptian people, saying the opening is already resonating across the region and the world. French daily newspaper Le Monde has said Egypt will open the Grand Egyptian Museum tomorrow, spotlighting Cairo's cultural power and a renewed tourism push. In a preview piece, Le Monde frames the museum's debut as a marquee moment for Egypt's image abroad, noting the site's draw for international media and tour operators ahead of peak season. Editors highlight the opening's significance for global cultural diplomacy and new cross-border partnerships in exhibitions and research. Officials expect heavy foreign press attendance and coordinated visitor flows on launch day, with promotional campaigns targeting European markets in the weeks that follow. Britain's independent newspaper says the Grand Egyptian Museum will finally open its doors tomorrow, a $1 billion complex spanning 500,000 square meters, about the size of Vatican City, touted as the world's largest museum devoted to a single civilization. According to The Independent, the Grand Egyptian Museum houses over 50,000 artifacts, surpassing the Louvre's 35,000, and is expected to give a strong lift to Egypt's tourism. The paper notes President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's large-scale infrastructure push to revive the economy. Opening highlights include the Tutankhamun galleries, King Khufu's solar boat and Ramses II's Colossus, the Grand Staircase, and a dozen exhibition halls. The project's long timeline saw a foundation laid in 2002, construction starting in 2005, COVID-related delays, and a recent postponement amid the Gaza war, before the launch set for tomorrow. Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass called the Grand Egyptian Museum's opening a global day, saying modern Egypt will showcase the glory of its ancient civilization in an unprecedented event tomorrow. Hawass has said the opening is effectively a holiday for world museums, citing two reasons for the gem's singular status: a unique display of treasures from Egypt's most famous pharaohs and the world's largest museum devoted to a single civilization. He said Egypt will reap political, media, tourism, and economic gains, with dozens of prominent international guests and extensive global coverage, including a broadcast carried by roughly 500 stations. Hawass said the ceremony will mark a cultural milestone, not just for Egypt, but for humanity. And lights bathed the Grand Egyptian Museum and the Giza Pyramids in color ahead of Saturday's long-awaited inauguration, as Egypt touts the Grand Egyptian Museum as the crown jewel of its tourism overhaul. With a panoramic view of the Pyramids Plateau, the billion-dollar Grand Egyptian Museum will showcase thousands of artifacts spanning over 5,000 years of antiquity. Final lighting tests and venue checks continued tonight as organizers prepared galleries and visitor flows for opening day. Officials say the complex is designed to lift arrivals, lengthen stays, and anchor new cultural itineraries. linking Giza with museums and sites nationwide. Dubai's Burj Khalifa lit up in Egypt's flag colours with pharaonic motifs, sending a salute to Cairo on the eve of the Grand Egyptian Museum's inauguration tomorrow. The world's tallest tower cycled through red, white and black bands and animated images of ancient Egyptian reliefs and statues, ending with the message, Egypt, cradle of civilizations. The display comes amid global build-up to the Grand Egyptian Museum's opening. Officials and tour operators expect the launch to draw heavy international attention and new itineraries centered on Cairo and Giza, anchored by headline collections including the full Tutankhamun assemblage.
And then, of course, we have the host tonight, and I just want to thank you very much. It was a reason we chose Egypt, because you were very helpful, and very, very helpful. Everybody wanted to have this, but we really thought it was appropriate, and you are a great leader. And he's a fantastic man and a fantastic general, by the way. But he's a great president, and I want to thank Egypt and all of your representatives for treating us all so well. Thank you very much.
Now, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has underscored the importance of resolving regional and international crises peacefully while respecting state sovereignty and preserving national resources. That came as President el-Sisi welcomed Colombia's President Gustavo Petro on his second visit to Egypt, praising the deep-rooted relations between the two nations and Egypt's commitment to strengthening bilateral cooperation. President Petro praised Egypt's diplomatic efforts, led by President el-Sisi, to end the war in Gaza and alleviate its humanitarian crisis. President el-Sisi announced Egypt's hosting of the International Conference on Gaza's Early Recovery and Reconstruction, which takes place in November. Israeli military chief of staff Eyal Zamir has warned that Israel will not tolerate any act endangering its security. His comments signaled Israel's readiness to respond decisively to any threats or violations. Axios has quoted a U.S. official as saying that Hamas had been given 24 hours to evacuate its forces from the area behind the Yellow Line in Gaza. After the deadline, Israel will enforce the ceasefire by force. The official added that Israeli operations would target Hamas positions within its controlled territories if the movement failed to comply with their ultimatum. U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, has arrived in Israel to discuss the situation in Gaza and the implementation of the ceasefire. Kane is expected to inspect the Civil Military Coordination Center in Kiryat Gat, which oversees ceasefire monitoring, and holds meetings with senior Israeli officials to assess field developments and ensure adherence to the truce agreement. Nasser Medical Complex in Qnews has announced that Israel had returned the bodies of 30 Palestinians to Gaza under the ceasefire and exchange deal. The move came a day after Hamas handed over the remains of 2 Israeli detainees via the International Committee of the Red Cross. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees has reaffirmed its commitment to delivering vital humanitarian assistance in Gaza despite the severe challenges facing residents. UNRWA said that its schools continue to serve as safe shelters for displaced families, providing protection, psychosocial support and dignity. That comes as over 12,000 UNRWA staff in Gaza work daily in education, healthcare and relief services. The agency stressed that every lesson, medical consultation or water distribution reflects the dedication of its staff who continue their mission under extremely difficult conditions. Three Palestinians were killed in Israeli shelling over the past 24 hours in Gaza. That came after the Israeli occupation army fired artillery toward eastern Qnews in the south, while they opened fire also on areas east of Jabalia in northern Gaza, marking renewed escalation despite the ceasefire. The European Commission has strongly condemned the attacks targeting civilians in Sudan, stressing that such violence is unacceptable. It affirmed that the European Union is actively employing all available tools to help achieve a peaceful resolution to the conflict. The EU also called for an immediate ceasefire and a return to negotiations, emphasizing the urgent need to protect civilians, facilitate humanitarian access and restore stability across the country through dialogue and diplomacy. Meanwhile, the International Committee of the Red Cross has called on world leaders to act immediately to stop the indiscriminate killings in Sudan. The ICRC also warned that the humanitarian situation in El Fasher and other areas has reached catastrophic levels. The United Nations has warned that El Fasher has become an epicenter of systematic atrocities. The UN added that nearly 120,000 people, including many children, were trapped amid escalating clashes between the Sudanese army and the rapid support forces in Darfur. The situation continues to deteriorate, raising grave humanitarian concerns over civilian safety and access to aid. The representative of the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund in Sudan has described the violence in El Fasher as unprecedented. That came as UNICEF reported abductions of women for ransom and relentless attacks on humanitarian agencies by the rapid support forces. He urged an immediate end to hostilities and unimpeded humanitarian access across Sudan, warning that aid organizations are under continuous gunfire. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has warned that civilians trapped in El Fasher are enduring horrific violence and suffering extreme shortages of food and water. That comes as the city remains under siege, with no humanitarian aid reaching it in over 500 days. OCHA emphasized that the humanitarian situation has reached catastrophic levels, urging immediate and unimpeded access to deliver life-saving assistance to those in desperate need. The World Food Programme has announced that aid trucks have been successfully offloaded in South Kordofan. for the first time in more than a year. The agency described the delivery as a crucial breakthrough in efforts to reach communities cut off by ongoing conflict and insecurity. WFP emphasized that the resumption of aid operations marks a vital step toward alleviating severe hunger and addressing the growing humanitarian crisis in the region. The International Organization for Migration, the IOM, has reported that around 62,000 people have fled the Sudanese city of El Fasher within just 4 days amid escalating violence. The agency added that routes used by displaced civilians are plagued by severe insecurity, with clashes and checkpoints obstructing safe passage. IOM warned that the humanitarian situation is worsening rapidly as civilians struggle to find safety or access aid or secure basic needs amid the ongoing hostilities. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdul Ati has held phone calls with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and the IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi to discuss developments in the Iranian nuclear file. Abdul Ati emphasized the need to sustain dialogue and reinforce cooperation between Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency, in line with the Cairo Agreement of September 9th. The talks, held under the directives of Egypt's president, aim to promote de-escalation and regional stability through peaceful solutions to the nuclear issue and intensified engagement among all concerned parties. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has denounced the U.S. decision to resume nuclear weapons testing as a regressive and irresponsible act. He criticized Washington's double standards regarding Tehran's peaceful nuclear program, warning that renewed testing poses a serious threat to international peace and security. Meanwhile, the United Nations has reaffirmed that nuclear tests are unacceptable under any circumstances, voicing deep alarm over heightened global nuclear risks. Responding to President Trump's announcement of renewed nuclear testing, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned against actions that could trigger catastrophic consequences for global security and nuclear stability. And on that happy note to end it with, of possible nuclear annihilation, let's get the tonight's main headlines once again. Egypt's President al-Sisi to inaugurate the Grand Egyptian Museum with the attendance of 79 global delegations. Egypt completes preparations for the Grand Egyptian Museum opening tomorrow. And the UN warns that El Fasher has become an epicenter of systematic atrocities. And for more stories and live updates, you can follow Q News on any social media platform at Qnews EGY. And from all of us here, have a very good evening.